Welcome to the Safeguarding Podcast. In each episode, we'll discuss a different safeguarding topic with a range of expert speakers. Please be aware some of this content is sensitive and listener discretion is advised.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Safeguarding Podcast. My name is Vicky Chafe and I am Head of Community Relations here at the Safeguarding Company. Jeremy, it is so good to have you here today. Would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Hi, thanks for the invitation to come on to the podcast. My name is Jeremy Indika. I raise awareness for child sexual abuse online. I have various platforms where I'm doing that, creating film, animation, photography, all around the subject and using the most creative ways that I can think of to communicate what is a very difficult topic to watch or listen to.
Absolutely. What made you start your journey?
So I actually began speaking out about the sexual abuse that I went through when I was a child, when I was 27 years old. The abuse actually finished when I was 10 years old, so that was 17 years afterwards. I started speaking to some close friends about what happened, and the more I spoke about it, the more confident I got with speaking about it, the more encouraged I was to tell more people. And then I started wondering about what was going on out there, who else was going through similar things, where was it being talked about, what was going on the internet. And I started researching. Now, prior to this, I had not had any links to anyone that had been gone through an experience of abuse, or I wasn't following anybody on social media. I was a young man, I was an engineer, I was out partying with my friends, leading a generally usual life, let's say. So when I started investigating, I started seeing the magnitude of what was going on, the scale of what was going on. So many people suffering with their story, the memories of their story. A lot of people explaining that they had nowhere to go. They had no one showing them that they could speak about this with strength and courage, and that's really why I wanted to change that narrative. I decided to start sharing my story in public online. It started getting traction. I started sharing it at open mic nights in London to live audiences, and one thing has led to another, and now we're nearly 4 years down the road, and I've got a YouTube channel, I've got a website, I've got social media platforms, and I've last year launched this movement called Something to Say, where giving other people the opportunity to also share their stories.
I've been fortunate enough to be on your website, and I think that it's absolutely fantastic, and all the videos that are on there are incredibly supportive, and you're so open and honest about everything that's happened to you as well. Do you feel that because you've been so open about what's happened to you, that is what's encouraging other people to speak out?
For sure, I believe that to be the case. I feel like it's so incredible for anybody that wants to speak about their experience to see someone else speaking about their experience. And I also always like to add that if you are new to my pages, or let's say it's the first time you're coming across my work, I'm pretty sure, like you're saying, it's so great to see myself on camera speaking very openly about my experiences as a child. But this has been a gradual process. As I mentioned, I was 27 when I spoke out for the first time about what happened. Prior to that, the only people that knew on this planet was myself and the man that did this. So I'm now 37 years old. So it's been 10 years of speaking and progress and development within myself to begin speaking about it more openly, trying to analyze actually what happened, trying to look back and seeing what went wrong. Why was this allowed to happen? Why did I never say anything when this was going on? Why was it not until I was 27 till I spoke out, 17 years after the abuse? And now on my pages, on my YouTube channel, I'm trying to investigate all of these things because I believe there's such strength in the story, right? There's incredible power in each of our stories, abuse or not. Everybody's life story holds so much power because there's so many lessons to be learned. What went right, what went wrong. And I want to use my story to find out what went wrong, and what we can do better today, and what we can start implementing so that this stops happening to so many children, even still today.
I mean, it's so empowering. And as you said, it took you until you were 27 to open up and to start talking about this. What do you think, now you've been analysed it, what do you think were the barriers for you opening up about what had happened to you?
So first of all, I didn't actually really start thinking about what happened until I was 25 years old. So 15 years after the abuse. And there's some statistics out there that I don't know off the top of my head about men speaking out, but generally it seems to be happening in their mid-20s. And it was then when the abuse really started bothering me. Now, prior to that, from 10 years old to 25 years old, I'd never forgotten about what happened. Something would come up in conversation, or something would come up on the TV that would remind me of it, send me off balance for a moment, but it would just be a moment. You know, I had a great career, I had great friends, I was out partying at the weekends, enjoying myself. But at 25, that changed. It was like something was bothering me, and I realised that it was actually the abuse. And I sat with it for 2 years because, of course, no man in his 20s wants to talk to anyone about what happened to him when he was a child, when it comes to something sexual, and when it comes to another man doing that to him. You know, there's this real fear around that. I'm still trying to explain what those barriers were, from 25, when I realised that the abuse was a big problem in my head, to 27. Why? What was the difficulty in saying something? Well, probably the first thing is you're worried about what people may think of you. Because essentially you were tricked and you were fooled, you were manipulated, you were groomed into doing something so horrific, so out of nature, so against a child's nature. There's something slightly embarrassing about that. There's something slightly shameful about that. It's not something that you want to talk about openly, especially with, okay, now obviously one of the options is to go and talk to a professional about that, but that wasn't anything in my mind. I wanted to talk to my boys about it, my mates. And, you know, that's a very challenging thing to talk about. So there's many barriers here. And I think that they're being broken now because we have the internet, we have the incredible tool of social media, and if you wish to speak out about something, you can now go and find other people very quickly that are doing the same thing. So I'm hoping that now we are starting to really break down the barriers.
It's really, really challenging, isn't it? Because it's, as you said, quite a lot of it is your preconceptions of what people are going to think about you and how this reflects on you. And that's so challenging in to move your story forward, and to be able to open up about everything that's going on or that has gone on. That might be too big a barrier for some people, mightn't it?
It really could be. It really could be too big a barrier. And so I speak a lot on my pages about other ways that you can release your story if you wish to. One of them is journaling. I often say, you know, I don't think that speaking about your story is the correct option for everybody. Everybody's different. Maybe you never actually want to talk about what happened to you when you were a child because that's not a box you want to open. And I don't think we should be advising everybody that they must speak out and they must go to a therapist and they must do this. I mean, who are we to tell anybody what they must do with their story? I think we should just lay out as many options as possible and allow people to take whichever one that suits them currently. And one of the ones that I'm a big advocate for is journaling. You know, if it's too much of a barrier to speak with someone face to face, then what you could do is you could begin just writing your story on a piece of paper and release it that way. One of my advices is just sit down and write 2 sentences, but write them in the way that when you read them back to yourself, they make you feel strong. And then next week, let's say you did this on a Wednesday. Next Wednesday, just set a target of writing 2 more sentences and rewriting the original 2 if you feel like you can write them in a way that when you read them back to yourself, make you feel strong. And then every week you're adding 2 more sentences to this story. And then you start to form your story and you're releasing it and putting it on the page. Because one of the things that definitely was a incredible realization was when I spoke about this for the first time, the feeling of release that I got, the feeling of confidence that I got through telling the story or releasing the story was absolutely incredible. It was like you begin to own the story and it stops owning you.
Yeah, and I can totally see that, and I so agree with what you're saying, that for some people, telling their story isn't the right option for them, and it is very much a personal journey, and everybody has their own way of dealing with it. And that idea of writing out a journal, some people have written books, haven't they? And they might have put those books in third person. So they're almost saying that it didn't happen to me, it happened to this character.
Right.
And that's another way that they've been able to deal with it. So you're absolutely right. There are definitely lots of other ways to support yourself through what has happened to you.
Absolutely.
When you were a child, do you feel that there could have been anything that was said or shown to you, maybe at school, that might have made you have that little bit more courage to say something, or realize that actually what was happening was wrong?
I think that's the main point of the discussion when we look back at my story when I was a child. So I was 8 years old when this was going on. And at that time, there was nothing alarming for me. There was I had no tools or knowledge to identify that what I was involved in was wrong. And therefore, I never said anything about it at the time that it was going on. I didn't think I needed to. I didn't even think it was a thing. It was just a part of my life that was going on. The grooming process worked incredibly on me. It's a very clever process, and it brainwashed me and manipulated me into thinking that. I mean, he had me wrapped round his little finger. I was never saying anything, and as I said, I didn't know that I needed to say anything. So when I was 8 years old, it was 1993. There was definitely nothing being talked about in schools about this. I know for sure it's completely changed now. I feel like we have a long way to go, but I also feel like we should feel optimistic that there has been change. But also, in 1993, there wasn't even the internet. So it wasn't like I had a phone or I was watching YouTube or I was watching music videos that had these suggestions of had these sexual displays in them, for me to see that I was kissing this man. But you don't normally see children kissing adults. Adults only kiss adults. Oh, maybe I'm involved in something that I shouldn't be. Right. Okay. Cuddling, sexual cuddling, what sex is. All of these things, I had no education or information on this. Of course, there was no conversations being had in my home. There were no conversations being had in anyone's home. There are no conversations being had in everyone's home today, even more so. It's still happening. I believe that's one of the areas where we're lacking the most. So I had no tools or knowledge to understand that what I was involved in was wrong. I feel like the kissing thing is something that is very difficult for people to get their head around. Anyone that's listening to this that has never really listened to any stories of abuse, or even maybe has listened to stories of abuse, I feel like the kissing thing is something that is never really spoken about. He taught me how to kiss him. We were French kissing, and that's something that he really liked doing. That was a very gentle experience for me. It was a very loving and caring experience for me. The act of kissing is very, very romantic, and he taught me how to do that. How in 1993 at 8 years old would I ever know, that it's not painful. It's not disturbing me. It's not uncomfortable. So I had no chance. I had no chance. I was a naive child, and I would like to see us turn this around to equip children with the tools and the knowledge to understand if something's happening to them and what they can do about it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's something that, we've spoken about before we started this podcast, was that as a parent and as a previous designated safeguarding lead, I can't look after these children 24/7. I'm not physically going to be with them all that time, so I can't protect them. But what I can do is I can give them the tools to protect themselves. And the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is by having these conversations about what is right and what is wrong. And as you were saying, that some of the experiences that you had, certainly with the kissing as well, it was a caring experience, it was a loving experience. And for some of our other victims of abuse that are possibly in a vulnerable position as well, that they might have been in care homes or foster care, where they're desperate for that kind of affection and attention, that would seem something that would be really well welcomed, almost,
Right.
because they're having that kind of connection with somebody that they so desperately want.
Right. Okay. And even when you take it to somebody in a family home as well, where you just made the comment about possibly children or young teenagers in foster care, and they're seeking that attention that maybe was absent through their previous years. We also need to remember that all children by nature are looking for attention. They're looking for praise. I mean, how many times, Mummy, look at me, Mummy, look at me, Daddy, watch this, watch this, watch this. That's their nature. They're always
Yeah.
looking for approval, connection, love, care. So as
Yes.
soon as an adult shows them that, which is actually disguised as the grooming process, they're going to respond very, very quickly. We are often surprised that these situations are happening. We shouldn't be surprised. Actually, it's quite straightforward to groom a child, especially if they're not if they don't have the tools and the knowledge to protect themselves. Now, one thing that I fully understand is the anger that we all feel, and lots of people feel, that we need to even teach children these things. And yes, we are angry that we live in a world where we need to teach children these things. I recently interviewed somebody on my YouTube channel who expressed that the prevention of sexual abuse primarily starts with adults, because we need to stop the adults from doing this to children. And I completely agree, but I feel like we also need to do both sides of this coin, because we live in a world where that's necessary. We are more than happy, and we all agree that the stranger danger conversation is necessary. As soon as the child understands language, we are teaching the child, don't speak to anybody that you don't know. They may take you away from mummy and daddy. And this conversation has been happening for generations, and we've accepted it as necessary. We're not happy that we have to give that information, but we accept that it's necessary, so we carry it out. And this is across board, right? This happens every country. So the conversation around private areas, I would love to see enter into that circle of education.
Absolutely, and there are so many more resources out there for parents to have those kind of discussions with their children. And I appreciate that, as a parent, it is really difficult to have those kind of conversations. The NSPCC have got some fabulous resources there to support parents to have those conversations about. There's the whole program that's the Talking Pants one, which I'm sure that you've seen, where that's even talking to nursery age children about it. And I totally echo what you're saying about that. It's hurtful that you have to teach your children this, but you have to teach your children how to cross the road safely, because the
Right,
danger's there. And as much as you don't want the danger to be there, you've got to do it.
right. Um, and one of the thoughts that came to my mind as you were saying that is, with the plenty of resources out there, I mean, I think we're in the best position we've ever been in
Yeah.
like the history of the human race when it comes to how many resources are out there. But there's one problem with it, and that is those resources are only being seen by the people that seek them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all about getting people to understand the urgency of this and encouraging them to do a little Google search. and educate themselves. We are talking about the parents, the caregivers, the nursery workers, the teachers. So we have a bit of a problem here because there is so much resource out there. But how are we going to encourage everybody to seek that resource out? Because otherwise it's just living in the internet space. So yes, there are lots of people that see the urgency on this and go and seek that information out. But there are more people who are not aware or encouraged or haven't been shown the urgency or the importance of this education. So one of my missions, which I feel like I'm going to be trying to accomplish my whole life, is how am I going to get this topic on people's table that haven't never really even thought about it?
Yeah.
Let's take my friends as an example, my friendship group, who I've all known from school. They would have never really thought about this topic unless I had brought it to them. Obviously, they follow me, they see what I'm doing, I'm their friend. So now they're all speaking with their children on this topic. But if I didn't know them, how could I get this topic on their table? Somebody who doesn't know anybody that's been through abuse before, somebody that doesn't follow anybody on social media that's been through abuse and wouldn't voluntarily go and seek it out. And I feel like film, animation, TV series, that's the kind of way we're going to get this topic on everybody's table because it's everybody's concern. How am I going to get a very clever drama on Netflix that is following the life of a survivor or following somebody who goes through abuse and seeing the aftermath of it, or following a parent's story who unfortunately didn't speak with their children and then their children disclosed to them when they were 30 years old? How am I going to get this topic on platforms like that? How am I going to get people going into work the next day, making their coffee and being like, oh my goodness, I watched this thing on Netflix yesterday, right? It's about sexual abuse, which obviously is a topic nobody goes to themselves, but you need to check it out. It's an incredible drama. It had me gripped. In fact, I watched all 3 parts of the series last night. That's what I'm looking for.
It's going further, isn't
Yes.
it? It's exactly as you said. There are the resources out there. It's incredibly difficult for parents who have no idea about what dangers or what's out there. When I was teaching, I was in North Manchester, which was a huge hotspot for child sexual exploitation. So we had the police Phoenix team in quite a lot, and they were talking to the parents to tell them all the dangers. And it's incredibly hard for schools to be able to do that because they're all totally stretched to absolute capacity. So as you said, it's getting that message through in a different way.
Right. So even if we even if the police go and give a talk at a school or a charity, even a safeguarding charity, or the NSPCC go and talk into a school and talk about the warnings and the signs, that's obviously going to be useful. But to create something that people are going to follow with interest, that has a slight entertainment value to it, like Netflix TV series does. Let me give you a quick example of who achieved this extremely incredibly. There was a TV series called The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. It was a 3-part series, and it was following a girl through her life. And it was she was training to be a chess. She was trying to be a chess champion, and this was released, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 years ago. And it was one of Netflix's most successful TV series. And following that TV series, Amazon and eBay reported selling out of chessboards. Right. Now, we're talking about this program being released in 2021. Chess is an old-fashioned board game. But that TV series got everybody so interested in the game that they went out and bought something that was dying out. Right. So the reason why I use that example is because that drama, which is what it was so gripping and so enticing and got everybody with this girl. They wanted to play that game. They got curious about chess. They were interested in chess. They wanted to know more about chess. So much so that they bought the board game. right? If we could do the same thing, but with this subject of child sexual abuse, can we create something that's so gripping, so enticing that you follow a character that you actually then afterwards start Googling this topic?
Yeah.
You then actually start talking to your 15-year-old daughter about this character on Netflix. In fact, maybe you even watch the series with your 15-year-old daughter. Now, that's something that I'm aiming for. And I actually believe that it's possible.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely. You know, the power of those miniseries, as you said, it's like the ones that talk about how people have managed to battle addiction
Right,
and the story that they've done. It's the same kind of
right.
thing, isn't it?
Right. So, what's that? A Star Is Born, Lady Gaga, and
Yes.
the other. Right. So that the male character in there is struggling with a drug addiction issue. Now, when
Yeah.
you watch that, if you've never really considered the concept of addiction, alcoholism as the example they use, you can really feel that character struggle.
Yeah.
Right. So you've learned so much, and I bet you, after watching that film, so many millions of people will now talk to somebody or think differently about somebody that is addicted to a substance like that. So you can see where the education is in the film.
Yeah.
Right, the education is in the film. It's not a classroom environment. It's not a lecture, right, that not many people warm to. It's a film with all the education embedded inside of it, and that is what I think I would like to move forward for. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you is, what would be your, I know we've talked about this before, but what would be your suggestion for victims of abuse? What would you suggest that they do if they're really struggling about where to go next?
So I would say that there are so many incredible options today available. There are incredible Facebook pages, Instagram pages, even TikTok accounts now that you could follow somebody who's speaking out and follow their journey and take some inspiration from them. Follow somebody who is very encouraging, and every time you come across one of their posts, you feel really interested in reading what they've got to say. But there are also pages, in particular on Facebook. One of them is called Tell Somebody, for example, and they are just sharing people's stories, and people can write in and they can share their story. You can follow them. There's also so many incredible therapists posting great stuff, psychologists, professionals posting great stuff. And if you're looking for someone, some form of encouragement, if that's something you're after, you can go and check all of this space out online. If you are in a position where you're thinking that you would like to actually say something out loud, then I suppose, and I always try to stay away from giving actual direct advice because
Yeah.
I'm not a professional. I'm just somebody who has done some things for myself. So when I was thinking about talking for the first time, I just made sure that the person that I was going to speak to was somebody who I trusted entirely. So I suppose if I can tell you what I did, then if that's something that you're looking to do, then to find somebody who you're trusting entirely would be incredible. I run a platform called Something to Say, and there we are sharing people's stories. I actually got the inspiration from that Tell Somebody page from Facebook. And because I got so much confidence and an incredible feeling of release from telling my story, I wanted to give other people the opportunity to do the same if they wish to do so. So actually, if you would like to follow a new resource, it's called Something to Say. You can find it on all the platforms, and we're doing incredible things there. And it's all about strength and courage, because what happened to you has happened now. It's over. It's finished. It's not happening anymore. I know it's painful, and I know it causes great discomfort, and it's very uncomfortable when you think about it. But I truly believe that there's a way forward, in particular that we can learn from what happened to us and ensure that it doesn't happen to the young people around us moving forward. I don't believe that it has to be only dark and gloomy. I believe that the fact that we're all still here living and breathing to tell our stories or even just to continue our lives is pure strength and courage. And I feel like I just want to encourage as many people as I can with the work that I'm putting out there.
Absolutely. And if anybody does want to find out any more from what you're doing, would you suggest that they go to your website as well?
Yes, just go straight to my website, jeremyindika.com, and all the links are there, all the work is there, all the history of this project, how I started it, what happened when I left my engineering career to pursue this, and what we're currently got ongoing with the newsletter, the launch of the podcast coming soon, the merchandise that we've released, and the vision for the future and where we're trying to take this with what I mentioned with Netflix, etc.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put all of that information in our show notes as well, so you'll be able to find that. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today and sharing your story with us as well and supporting all of our safeguarders to make that difference.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for inviting me. If anybody has any questions or would like to talk more about certain parts of this podcast, please, if you do go to my website, there's a inquiries box there and it comes straight through to me. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for all the work you're doing as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening. And remember, keep yourself safe because you are all our safeguardians. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Safeguarding Podcast. For resources and more information about our safeguarding solutions, please visit thesafeguardingcompany.com. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe and feel free to rate us using whichever podcast provider you use.